Hello and welcome to Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Crisis Media-Center, NGO Euroatlantic Course and Analytical Center of Ukrainian Catholic University. My name is Victoria Zabiyan, I'm head of the UCMC Press Center. Please like, share this video and subscribe our channel to stay tuned. Today's topic is Russian geopolitical blackmail going beyond Ukraine, and it will be dedicated mostly to Russian threats to Finland and Sweden regarding their course for NATO and to the Baltic states amidst their massive support of Ukraine. We asked foreign experts to comment how the threats coming from Russia have changed for the region with the start of Russian full-scale war against Ukraine, and how does the expert community act in the face of those threats. And we start with the comment by Norwegian expert Hans-Peter Midttun. Let's take a look.
The full-scale invasion of Ukraine on 24th February did not change the threat to Norway, Sweden, Finland or the Baltic states. It only helped change the threat perception. The war has been ongoing for more than 8 years already. The invasion took the war to a new level of violence and brutality. But it's still the same war by the same aggressor, with the same capabilities and the same intent. Only the strategy changed. Lacking a proper Western response to its many breaches of international law during the last 8 years, and not seeing the willingness to respond in the manner the West did during the Cold War, and seeing this as a sign of weakness, Russia became increasingly more aggressive in its force posture in both the Baltic Sea and the Barents Sea. We saw an increasingly more aggressive, assertive and emboldened Russia in the north. The Nordic countries, including the Baltic states, experienced more aggressive behavior at sea, in the air, border violations, combat aircraft flying attack profiles, jamming of GPS signals, artificial restrictions to freedom of navigation, and increased level espionage, cyber attacks, and much more. While the attack on Ukraine confirmed a threat already in place, it also served as a wake-up call. It shook the perception that the war in Ukraine was only limited to Ukraine and had limited bearing on the rest of Europe. The West were in denial for 8 years. The Russian ultimatum of 16th December last year and its invasion of Ukraine on 24th of February changed all of that. Russia has shown the world that military force is an integrated part of its foreign policy wherever it is engaged. The level of atrocities and brutality both shocked, mobilized and united the West in support of Ukraine. The Russian demands at the start of the invasion and the ensuing information campaign also helped demonstrate that the Russian truths, in a sense, are lies. They help people understand that Russia exists in a parallel dimension, making diplomacy redundant. It helped the Nordic countries realize that what the Eastern and Central Europe knew already. Russia only understand the language of war. For Sweden and Finland, the invasion has probably helped them conclude that security can only be achieved as a member of NATO. The Russian ultimatum to the United States and NATO on 16 December last year, demanding the alliance to stop this so-called eastward expansion, helped trigger a dormant debate on future NATO membership. The invasion only helped fuel an already ongoing process. During the last 10 weeks, we have seen a transformation of the Western resolve. It is increasingly recognizing that it needs to do more. Supporting Ukraine is not enough. The West has realized that Russia must be weakened to a level where it can never again start a war. I believe that our resolve will develop further. I believe NATO, or a coalition of the willing, eventually will be forced to execute a humanitarian intervention operation to help Ukraine evict the Russian armed forces. It's the only way the war can be brought to an end soon. we can end the senseless suffering, stop the destruction of Ukraine, avoid the multiple and possibly long-term ripple effects of the war, and at the same time ensure a self-sustained and sovereign Ukraine. Being potentially on the verge of starting a membership acceptance process, Sweden and Finland are rightfully concerned they will be vulnerable to Russian threats during an application process, which could take up to a year to be approved by all 30 NATO members. They are vulnerable to Russian interference in the same manner as Georgia in 2008 and Ukraine in 2014. This is the reason the United States yesterday offered security assurances to Sweden and Finland for the period after they apply for NATO membership and before they are accepted into the alliance. Ironically, the biggest assurance is provided by Ukraine. Its resilience, courage, resistance, and counterattacks are most likely denying Russia the opportunity to effectively respond to the Swedish and Finnish NATO membership process.
Expert in disinformation Anneli Ahonen underlines that people and government of Finland support Ukraine very much in its fight against Russian aggression, and it's obvious for them that if Russia does it with Ukraine, it can do it with other neighbor countries.
So you asked how is Russia targeting Finland currently with disinformation? These type of disinformation and influence operations targeting Finland as well as Sweden coming from Russia have now been intensifying and increasing at the same time as Finland and Sweden are about to announce their decision to apply to NATO. What we haven't seen yet is a big domestic disinformation campaign run through Russian TV channels, the main propaganda tool that the Kremlin has. So this hasn't been extensively happening yet. However, there are other means that have been at use. For example, the social media trolls targeting Finnish media, or old disinformation messages making allegations about the history of Finland and the Nazi ties in there, and these are based on older campaigns that had been run inside Russia earlier. So this is happening in the background, and this type of development of the messages. I think that in Finland, people are well aware of the Russian threat. Finland has maintained its own army throughout the Cold War, and until the current day, there is a very high will to defend the country. What changed on 24th of February was this profound realization that the current days Russia is ready to start a criminal war and launch an invasion of its sovereign, independent neighbor. And here the Finnish logic is that if this is possible that Putin's Russia is doing this to Ukraine, then there is no reason why it wouldn't in some day in the future it would be possible that it's trying to do this to its other sovereign neighbors, and that's why the NATO support jumped immediately after 24th of February. And this is also the reason why Finns admire so much Ukraine's fight for its own sovereignty, statehood, and defending Europe as well. Now, in the upcoming months and in the future, Finland is expecting that these type of malign influence, disinformation, hybrid cyber attacks will only increase. I think that Finland is well prepared to face this and to tackle this. It's not. This is not a short-term game. It's a long-term game that Finland has been prepared to for a long time. There is also high trust in Finland to the authorities. There is strong independent media. The media is constantly exposing these lies and disinformation campaigns, and Finns are taught from their early years how to separate facts from fiction. So I think these are the basic fundamental elements why this will also hold in the future.
We also asked expert from Sweden, Magnus Demervall, what are the reasons behind the desire of Sweden to become a NATO member and whether Russia-Ukraine war was the main one. Let's take a look.
It's of course hard for me to talk about how every citizen in Sweden are thinking, but I believe that the overall picture is that people are getting a bit more anxious, but they are also getting more aware of how the Putin regime and the Kremlin are acting and operating, and the evilness. And of course, there's a lot of rage against Putin on his full-blooded invasion of Ukraine. I think the three biggest shifts compared to before the war is that there in Sweden now is a bigger willingness to spend more on defense budget. There's a bigger desire to build defense, safety and security together with other democracies such as EU and NATO. And throughout the population there is a huge willingness to help Ukraine with humanitarian aid, with defense weapons, and of course also that Sweden should be a place where those Ukrainians that have to flee from the bombs, from the disgusting war from Vladimir Putin, should be welcome. I'm not a military expert, so it's hard for me to elaborate, it wouldn't be right, on what Putin will do next. But I think that this tactic with the geopolitical blackmailing against other countries is not working anymore. It's a very common tactic from authoritarian leaders to try to scare us to make other decisions. But I think that what they are really doing is getting us closer to Ukraine, closer to other democracies, closer together, rather than becoming scared and making other decisions. In Sweden, we are getting more and more determined to build a defense, to build safety and security together with others, and to help those that Putin are attacking. So I think it has been a big strategic mistake from Vladimir Putin, and it certainly has not helped him in his narrative here in Sweden. When it comes to NATO, I come from a party that have been in favor of joining NATO for quite some time, so I might be a bit biased. But of course, the war from the Russian regime against Ukraine is the biggest factor of the shift here in Sweden. The very strong feeling that we should build our safety together with other democracies, though it is important to say that we have not made a decision. There is no decision made here in Sweden, although it's a big discussion in Sweden on joining NATO. People in public polls, for example, are responding more and more often that they want Sweden to join NATO. I think that the war from Russia against Ukraine has shown a broader public in Sweden what an authoritarian leader as Vladimir Putin really is, how he operates, what his goal is, and that is, quite frankly, nothing else than a good argument for many people for Sweden to join NATO.
You've been watching Ukraine in Flames, a special project by Ukraine Crisis Media Center, NGO, Euroatlantic Course and Analytical Center of Ukrainian Catholic University. In description to this video you can find the information about how personally you can help Ukraine against Russian aggression. Everything is gonna be Ukraine.